Paul, welcome to the Once Bitten podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be able to sit down and talk with both of you.
Thank you.
Well, Lauren, what do you want to know?
Why did you write a book?
Well, that's a great question. It was certainly something that I didn't expect to be doing. But once you fall down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you end up traveling into places and little burrows that you don't always envision when you fall down that hole. So the concept for the book actually came to me on the yoga mat. So I'm a yoga practitioner, not in the form that most people in the West think of yoga as sort of a gym class for flexibility, but in a true yogic tradition from India. And in doing lots of reading in the space, lots of work in it, I was on the mat one day and it came to me that we really need to bring some more profound universal principles into the dialogue about money and Bitcoin. Well, much of the dialogue is absolutely fantastic. I've also seen dialogue that is divisive. Are you a vegan? Are you a carnivore? Things like that, that I think can detract from the space. And what I really saw is that we need to bring love into this. So, hence the title of my book. And most people get, even if they don't understand Bitcoin and what really it is, but they get that somehow money and Bitcoin are connected. But this word love in the middle, that seems a little out of place. And I think it has a place here, very much so. And so that was the motivation to bring those concepts into the space.
And it's a great book. I love it. Thank you for sending me the PDF so I could get up to speed before we hit record on this. And
Well,
I,
thank
I
you.
hope to see you.
Absolutely.
You're going to be in Dublin, right?
Yes, I will be in Dublin. So
So
excited
I'll
for
be able to
that.
get
So,
an
yeah,
actual copy from you, signed, and bring it back home. Yeah, that would be amazing.
absolutely.
Lauren, any further questions? Anything you wanted to delve into? Like, do you think it's weird, or do you think it's natural that love and Bitcoin should go together?
I
Ever thought
mean,
about it?
I've never really thought about it. It's just kind of been that, like I
Mhm.
thought love and Bitcoin was just a thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the love of Bitcoin. Like I love
Yeah.
Bitcoin. Oh
The
right,
love
okay,
of Bitcoin,
the
but
love
not
of
the
Bitcoin, right?
yeah,
Yeah, but not
but
like
not the
the way Paul's talking
yeah,
about
not the
it.
way
Well,
yeah.
you've been to the conferences. Don't you feel like the positive energy when, like, Madeira, for example, was a great example there because I think there was I think two things happening in Madeira. That the fact that it was all open in natural light, 3 days of just basking in natural, wonderful, beautiful light and fresh air. Whereas most conferences, you're just in this horrible, like LED lit hell pit. But the energy was something completely different, very profound. Lots of tears. A couple of guys crying on stage at the end of their talks. It was there was a feeling of love, and you felt it. We all did. We all spoke about it. So that's what Paul's talking about. He's trying to tap into that and trying to explain that to people or explore it. And I think it's very underexplored.
Well, thank you. And so I think we can have more and more dialogues about it in the space. And that was really my objective, is to think about it more broadly than just the very important economic principles, the very important monetary policy principles involved in it that are much discussed, and people have done fantastic work on it. But if we want to get from that saying of fix the money to fix the world, I think a lot more needs to go on in the middle there. And that's where love really fits in. Because to fix the world is going to take a lot more than just a new monetary technology. It will have a tremendous impact. It can begin to change some of the problems that we have in the existing system. But we also need to change our mindsets and our value structures. And that's why I think love plays into it. So, Lauren, this is before your time, but it'll be a test of your dad's skill in exposing you to various musical traditions. But do you know who Tina Turner is?
Not her name. I don't know her name.
No, yeah, but I think if we were to play some of her songs, you'd probably, well, the one he's going to mention is "What's Love Got to."
Yeah.
What's love got to do about it? Right? Is that the title?
What's love got to do with it? So yeah, Tina Turner sang that great song. What's love got to do with it? Now, she sang it in a different context. She sang it about the question of between in a relationship and having challenges in a relationship. How does love impact things? And if you haven't been in such loving relationships, can you really fall back and trust on love? But I use it, and I use it as a transition point at several points in the book to say, what has love got to do with these topics of money and Bitcoin? And my answer is, I think it has everything to do with it. And the more we look at these more profound, deep principles like love, I think we're going to have a much better chance of not only fixing the money, but the real end goal is fixing the world, so to speak. So, Daniel, you can play Tina Turner's "What's Love Got to Do with It" for Lauren later today.
Yeah, I'd be interested. Go find it on Spotify after this. Just go find it on Spotify and take a listen. And I guarantee it's going to register. So it might even be some meme or something that you've like the kids. They watch these memes and oh, look at this meme, and it's like it's always kind of this old. That's the Careless Whisper meme, right? They love this.
So that I knew that was an old song. Though.
Yeah, but right, okay. But what my point being, a lot of these old songs are being used in memes around your age group circles, right? So I wonder if there's or a trend. I don't know what you guys call it. Don't watch TikTok, kids. They tell me they don't watch TikTok, Paul. Right. You don't have it on your phone though, right? Good. All right.
Anyways.
Because there's no love on TikTok. Oh, maybe there is. I don't know. I doubt it though. There's certainly no love on Instagram.
Sometimes there might be a little too much of what's passing as love these days and really isn't.
We're going to get into that, Paul, because there's a whole chapter on that. I've started that chapter, and there's a reason that I want to dig into that with you. So, listeners, we won't go there straight away, but stick around for the chapter on. It's the only Bitcoin book I've read with a whole chapter on sex. So there's a little dangled carrot for people. But I do want to get into your past and where you've come from first to get up to speed as to what's brought you here. So anyway, Lauren, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and have a nice chat.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing you. Are you going to be in Dublin?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can play "What's Love Got to Do with It" and together. So
yeah. In fact, Knut's going to go, so I'll tell him get practicing Tina Turner.
That would be awesome.
And we'll have a sing along, karaoke.
Okay.
All right, cool. Go listen.
Ciao.
Okay, Paul. So, yeah, I like to have these conversations with people. I know you've listened to the show many times, and you're probably used to the arc of where it goes. I want to get kind of back to pre-Bitcoin. What were you doing? What's made you in the past? So how old are you now?
I am 63.
Okay. And so what was the main part of your fiat career in air quotes?
Yeah. So my most recent career was actually as a certified financial planner, financial advisor, and wealth manager in the U.S. So I worked for some very large national firms and then ended up breaking out on my own to have my own independent practice. And at the end of my career there, I actually rebranded my practice as Mindful Wealth Management. because what I was trying to do for my clients is really have money work for them, not just to grow the money, but to distinguish money's just a tool to do what you want to do in life. And so much of the culture and so much of the investment arena is filled with some of the things that Bitcoin is filled with. Number go up. Did I hit my number today? How much did, my account go up? And it's important to understand, and I try to get my clients to understand and work with them, that it's what you want to do with your life. So when I would sit down with someone who was getting ready to retire, and I also became a retirement coach, I'd ask them, what do you really want to do in retirement? What are your dreams and your goals and your expectations of how you want to add value in this new chapter in your life, what you want to be experiencing? And sadly, I can only remember one person, a guy named Cal, who could say very specifically what he wanted to do of something of meaning, rather than just, I don't want to have to go to work at a job I don't like. I want to have more free time to play golf. But somebody who could articulate, I want to read more. I want to do long distance cycling all across the country. And I want to work in a prison ministry. I want to do something to add value. And sadly, again, it sticks out of my mind because it's the only person that I can remember ever being able to really articulate it that way. And I think that's one of the issues that we have in our society and our culture is so many people, one, you just have to work to make ends meet. And we don't really get the opportunity to think oftentimes about the more deeper meanings of life and what it is that's springing up from inside us that really is calling us to do and to contribute, even when we don't have to work necessarily for a living. I came to writing this book in some ways because I got to a point in my career where I said, you know what? It's time for me to pass this torch on to somebody else, because I'd had some shifts in my life. I was probing some of these deeper questions more, and being embroiled in the daily and the monthly gyrations of the market was more draining than it was uplifting. And I knew that I needed to have a little more spaciousness in my life to find out what was really going to call me. Now, the first thing happened was, as soon as I retired and sold my practice, COVID hit. And that changed everything. In fact, I was in India doing some long deferred yoga teacher training when COVID hit, and we were in lockdown there, couldn't leave the facility for a month. And I only got back on a repatriation flight from the US arranged to get people out of Delhi. And so I came back thinking, okay, I had my financial plan in place. This is what I did for a living. I knew how my investment strategy was going to work. And you got back and realized, wait a minute, this whole world has changed. How can you shut economies, not let people go to work, and after a couple of weeks, the stock market falling, all of a sudden rebounding? And I got to thinking, wait a minute, the plans that I always drew up and that I was going to rely on don't make sense anymore. And that's what led me down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, to realize I need to understand more how I'm going to prepare myself and what's really going on. I think my aha moment was when we ended up, because of COVID, we had been planning to move internationally, but that plan was scratched. And so we bought a house, and in a year, the price of the house went up 20, 25%. I'm like, this is insane. And I had that aha moment that it's not that the value of the house was going up, it's that the value of what I was trying to buy it with, or would be buying it with, was going down. So in my inflation rate, there's 20 or 25%. That's not going to work on all the traditional financial planning models that I built things on.
Right. So had you heard of Bitcoin before this, before you sold the business?
Yes. A number of clients had brought it up to me.
Uh-huh.
I thoroughly dismissed it. In fact, my wife brought it up to me because she has a very strong intuitive sense, and she could sense, there's something that's wrong here. Now, because she's not a financial planner and trained in the business, she couldn't translate it into the things that would logically necessarily resonate with me. So I said, no, if we need that, we've got a whole lot more problems in our system, and that's not going to solve it. So I dismissed it. I wish I hadn't, because if I had at the time, long before I got into it, maybe I'd be one of those rich Bitcoin bros now. But I got into it when it was the right time for me and when it happened. So I had certainly heard of it, thoroughly dismissed it, because if you're in traditional finance, it doesn't make any sense. And, at that time, we didn't know what the adoption rates would be, how the network effect would really build out. Would there be a regulatory clamp down on things that would prohibit it from being successful? And in the intervening years, and certainly in the last few years, we've seen so many of those factors shift and change that it's pretty clear this is where we're going now, even though most people don't see it.
So a few questions around this, because I've had Andy on the show, obviously Andy Edstrom, and his book, Why Buy Bitcoin, which I think came out in 2018-19, was really interesting for me because, he was writing that from the position of a wealth manager, ex-Goldman, ex-Lehman, I can't remember the exact banks, but now working directly with clients. And he came to the sudden realization that, okay, I've learned all of this. So now, like, he had a fiduciary duty to share that with his clients, right? As far as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you ever get, like, people in your network reaching out to you to ask you your advice, like actual financial planners that are still there, perhaps the people that bought the business from you, or ex-customers or clients? Are they now coming to you? I just want to get a sentiment of what's happening.
Yeah, very few. I've largely distanced myself from that world, not only by putting a couple of thousand miles between me and an ocean where I live now and where I used to and operated that practice. But I think, and it was just like I was, nobody really teaches you in the investment arena, in financial planning, about what money is. You're just working within a system. So when you don't peel that onion back to get to the core and understand it, you're just working within a system the way the system works. And the reality is that for most of us, and for many years, you do have to work within that system, because that is the majority of the system. And that's what people understand. That is the way much of it works. And so in a transition period, which we are emerging into, I think, the early adopters is a small segment. And for many people who have very low risk tolerance, and I talk about this in my book, that most of my clients really had no interest in being in the stock market. They had no interest in doing all these things that they realized they had to do. They would have much preferred to just save their money, not have to worry about what panic was happening on CNBC today and market crashes. I mean, I went through 2008, 2009. It was a horrible period. And people who had just retired then, devastating potentially, especially if they reacted emotionally. But again, most people didn't really want to be in the investment arena taking this excess risk, but there was no choice. And as I talk about in the book, and most of us know, it's this monetization of other assets because of the inflationary system that robs everybody of the peace and comfort of just being able to save, when they have no interest in being venture capitalists to parlay hundreds of thousands or millions into billions. That's not what they worked 30 or 40 years for. They want to enjoy their families, their grandchildren. They want to relax. They want to do some traveling. They want to express, what is coming out of them, and have a loving end to their lives. It's not about making the money now, but they're forced to. So it gave me a career, but I tried to bring into that space, again, these deeper values as I could. It's not just about the money, it's what it can do for you. But most people, and me included, just didn't think about things this way.
Yeah, I certainly didn't. I 100% didn't. I spent 18 years in foreign exchange markets and didn't once think about what is money until I was out of it, and had the chance to just drop a knee, take a breath, think, look around, ask deeper questions. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't have just ripped off the Band-Aid and walked away from it. So what then? Let's talk about yoga and your experience with that. When did that start creeping into your life, and why did you feel that you needed to explore that?
Well, I was actually a philosophy major in college. So these were issues that were of interest to me long ago. And I also speak about it in the book. One of the books that had a seminal influence on me, I actually read in high school. It was a book by Fritjof Capra. It was called The Tao of Physics. And it was showing the parallels between Eastern wisdom traditions and modern quantum physics. That everything is energy. It's an interconnected web of life. The classical Newtonian physics of these isolated particles of matter and atoms is not where quantum physics has brought our understanding. And that was very consistent with most Eastern traditions. So that formed a worldview for me very early on. And then you come out of college and you got to get a job and you get married and you have kids and you do all the normal things that one does in life, and you start to lose track of that, because at the time I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to go live in a cave somewhere in the Himalayan mountains at the age of 22, although there was part of me that was appealing to do that. But, normal life, so to speak, comes to you and you do those things. And then after having raised children, after having gone through a long-term marriage that dissolved, I was in a different position in my life. And so I began to fall back and look at, I need to return to these deeper questions that I had and a deeper understanding and ultimately experience. Because one can have an intellectual understanding of things, but there's a difference between belief and a knowingness. And the knowingness comes from your own experience. So I was very fortunate that my now wife had also been on this venture. She was a little ahead of me, and she had her own corporate consulting firm in IT and technology back in the days. And she had a realization, and so began exploring some of these issues. And so when we got together, it was a great spark for me to then return to these questions, because it was calling me, and we now in our partnership wanted to embark on these together. So we ended up quite unexpectedly meeting a very young teacher from India who actually wrote the foreword to my book, who I understood really spoke truth. He wasn't asking for belief in anything, and he gave practices that allowed one to really experience an energetic shift within oneself. And so, quite unexpectedly, in 2015, I ended up in India for my first time, and had been back several times since. and actually planning to go in September in a journey in the high Himalayas. He's taken people on motorcycle rides in the high Himalayas as a real journey of going beyond fear. Now, I'm not a motorcycle rider, but I'm going to go, even if I'll be in an SUV for part of the time and on the back of the bike occasionally. But a very deep experience, because when you're in that land, it's a land that is not the land of Walmarts and Rite Aids. It's a land with very deep spiritual traditions. So I came to yoga again, not because it was a gym class to increase my flexibility, but because it was a spiritual quest for a deeper understanding of my place in life. And sitting in a circle with a number of people and having a dialogue in 2015 with him, and because I had a philosophy background and understood certain things, and we went at each other in a way, because I wasn't accepting of certain things at the time. I still had a materialist bent in a way, and a reductionist sort of bent. And everybody else in the circle is looking at the two of us going, what in the hell are they talking about? And I finally had that aha moment. And I had that knowingness. And I told him, I said, I handed you Occam's razor, the thing to cut through, okay, to the simplest explanation that there really was. And I got it. And that fundamentally changed my life.
You remember what it was that he said?
It was the awareness when one looks around to understand that there is some intelligence behind the construct of the universe. That if you look at the flower, you look at the bee pollinating the flower, you look at the bee creating honey, the animals eating the honey, is this random? You can say it's a random function of material coming together, that consciousness is a random expression of chemicals in the brain. But ultimately, you do get to the question of, and so where did that start? Is there a why behind that? And I think that's what we all look for. And I don't have the answers to all those questions, but it did make me realize that the fundamental question of life is unanswerable in a pure scientific experiment basis, that there are two paths of knowledge, and science is fundamentally important. We would not have the bridges and the transportation structures and the technologies that we have, and the understanding of many things in life, without relying on the process of the scientific methodology. And yet, we've all had the experience of knowing something, that intuitive gut feeling. We know it. There is absolutely no basis that we can point to that we could replicate through some scientific experiment of that knowingness. It's just another path of knowledge. And I think, unfortunately, the willingness to explore that, the acceptance of that intuitive path of knowledge, has been cast aside by most of us in the world, and certainly in the West. And we've lost something in that. And that's part of what I also try to bring out in the book.
That those moments, they just get whitewashed now as, oh, deja vu. I just had some deja vu. I move on with life. It's like, no, just stop. Just stop and think about that. Like, what does that mean? Lauren's been experiencing it randomly last couple of weeks. She's like, huh? She must have said it 3 times in the last 10 days. I knew this moment. I've seen this moment, but what's going on? But she's like, am I a visionary? Like, so I'm just letting her explore like it. But it's good to see her not just, or me or my wife say, oh yeah, it's just deja vu, move on from there, whatever, it happens to everybody. Because like it is that's the moment that you're talking about. Like one example. Another example could be dreaming, and you wake up the next morning, and a tiny part of that dream just suddenly happens in front of your eyes. Or the fact that I might just be sitting here randomly in the garden having a coffee, thinking about, oh, I haven't spoken to Andre or Rob in a long time. And then within 4 hours, I've got a text. You know, you think, huh? Like what? Like these little touch point moments that we just shrug off and don't give any time of day to.
Right. And, that's a great example of the real network that operates, the network of consciousness. So again, just like within Bitcoin space, if you're running a single node and that's it, and it's not connected to anything else, and you don't think it is, it's a relatively useless node. Okay. The power comes in the network of nodes and the interconnection between them. And I think that's the case with consciousness. We are all individual, unique expressions of life, consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it. And that individuality needs to be honored and respected. And whatever it is that we have to express in life needs to have a platform and the ability to express that. And we also have to recognize that we are part of an interconnected web of life. This is a system. And so, again, in the Bitcoin space, there's lots of talk about sovereignty. And it's a very important principle when it comes to the individual point, to be able to have our freedom from constraints and controls to allow us to express that. But no one is an entirely sovereign individual. I was having a conversation with Gigi the other day, and he said, yeah, you want to be a sovereign individual? Let me drop you naked in the middle of the Amazon, and let's see how you do. We live in an interconnected universe, and that's critically important to understand. There's individuality within plurality. So again, I think this is where, when we begin to think about how we fix the money to fixing the world, we have to think about the underlying principles of the two sides of the coin, individuality and a system of plurality, and respecting both sides. So, Bitcoin is often talked about as freedom money. And it can be. Freedom from all these things, freedom from restrictions, freedom from government controls, freedom from an inflationary system. But just as important is what Bitcoin is freedom to do. We need to also be talking much more about what it is the freedom we want to do in our society. It's not just the freedom to buy more stuff. That's great. Anybody can have whatever they want that their resources can provide if they're contributing, not extracting. And I think that's one of the fundamental problems that we have in our monetary system, is we have lots of extractive behavior and not as much contributory behavior by the design of the system. It rewards people to extract value. You look at your old business, okay? It's a necessary function to have foreign currency hedging and transactions when you are doing business internationally, when you have multiple currencies. It's a necessary function. You can make money at it. But what is it really contributing to the human condition?
Yep.
It's necessary in the system, but if we shift that system, then we don't need that. And all the time, attention, and energy that flows into something that really doesn't ultimately add value to the human condition could be freed up to add real value.
Hundreds of thousands of people released, and that's the thing. People will be, oh, they'll lose all their jobs, and that this the argument of AI is going to put everybody on the streets and nobody's going to be able to. But for me, it's no, you just released a whole bunch of human potential that was just locked up doing menial tasks and extracting value from other people in this zero-sum game system in which we've all been tricked into living, and using these promissory notes of debt to somebody else, to your central bank, basically. And just it's madness. But so back onto yeah, listeners are going to be thinking, there are some that love the woo and some that don't, right? But I love going down these little rabbit holes, because I was never, in air quotes, a spiritual person, but that's, you certainly, something touches you when you start interacting with Sound Money and you get into these conversations. Gigi's a perfect example. When you have a beer with Gigi and you just, before you know it, you're down all kinds of rabbit holes. And one of his I love one of his old sayings, there are no coincidences. And Rob is another guy, Rob Brinded. His book, Decentralized Mind, talks about this. He's been on very much the same kind of journey as you, was in a very high-flying position at Chelsea Football Club, Barcelona Football Club, killing it. And then one day realized this is all bullshit and had to leave, and went on his own journey, went to India, he did all the things, and he realized the network of the mind. And funnily enough, I was just listening yesterday to Marty Bent's conversation with Jack Cruz. I'm not sure if you've caught that one yet.
No.
But Jack comes at it from, a deeply scientific, biological background, with his many decades and years of experience in neuroscience and neurosurgery and brain surgery. And he's been really dropping some brilliant interviews recently about light and how it affects us, and how we are light beings, and how we are all connected. We're walking antennae, I think, is one of the terms he used. So we are all connected. And he was it was a fascinating episode, because he was talking about all of the links to DARPA, the CIA, the EMFs, and all of this frequency kind of cloud in which we now live under, the dirty tech which we're using right now to talk with each other, with the flashing blue light in the background, and how that is designed to affect us as walking antennae, because we are electrical beings. If I touch this laptop, I am now passing this electromagnetic field through me. Now I'm a water bag. Water conducts electricity. It's absolutely fascinating. None of this stuff you get taught at school. Why would they want to teach you about exactly what's going on with money as well? And then somebody brought up to me, I was playing golf with Rick, another Bitcoiner, the other day. He's like, dude, have you listened to this recent episode on Joe Rogan about telepathy? I'm like, no, I'm going to have to get into that though. So it's really, yeah, it's wild that to think that, have you felt like when you're doing your yogic practice, it's not like you can connect to like the hive mind, for example, or can you, or do you see colors, but you just explain what a general practice would look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think when you begin to talk about these things and you use the word, it can, because of our lack of appreciation of it, especially in Western cultures, seem wooey, airy-fairy, kind of out there, crazy, new agey. I'm about the most grounded kind of guy that you can get. Again, I was a financial planner in the investment business. And yet we need to understand there is more to life than the sensory inputs of the five senses. Again, we are a force of energy within a field of energy. Science tells us that. Depending upon how we observe things, it's a particle or a wave. That's not wooey. That's what the science tells us now. Now, the fact that we can take that and put that into a little more comprehensible terms for the human by putting it into a spiritual tradition, whether it's an Abrahamic faith and a Christian tradition, Buddhism, yoga, Taoism, what have you, they generally have all tried to express the same thing. We are all connected. We come from the same source, right? That source is a loving source, and we need to be connected to that. And if we're not, we become very unhappy people. And the more we disconnect from it, the more likely we are to create a hell on earth rather than a heaven on earth. And so many practices from many traditions are simply a way of putting a little space between the mundane, the sensory input from the TV screen, from the computer screen, from the phone, from the kids screaming, whatever it may be, putting a little space between all of that input to allow us to tap into those coincidences, to tap in to an energy source beyond electricity as it comes through a wall socket. And there's lots of different practices. There's lots of different ways of doing it. I mean, you know, for many people, unfortunately, who have had traumatic experiences in their life, that trauma gets trapped and locked in the body, and it's very hard to penetrate beyond that, because the body then produces chemicals that reinforce it. Again, this is the science that trap us in a chemistry of limitation, of fear, of anxiety, of addiction, whatever it may be. And we can change our biology. We can change our thought processing. We can, you know, the brain is a chemical manufacturer, and the glandular system, the pituitary and pineal glands, send chemicals out through our bodies. I mean, when you are in intimacy with a lover, your brain is sending out chemical systems to make you feel a state of bliss that you don't normally feel when you're watching, you know, TV. So there's an interconnection between these experiences, but the brain is producing these chemicals. And so, again, many different practices, whether it's meditation, whether it is energetic practices to release some of this trauma that oftentimes gets trapped in the body, free movement, dance, lots of things. They're just beautiful practices. And again, many different things will resonate with different people. It doesn't matter what it is that resonates with you. If you go, that's crazy, I'm not interested in it, fine. But what is it that will take you beyond the mundane? Because we all know life is not just about buying things. It's not a game of who has the most stuff wins. We know that. But we get so trapped in it. And the system has a lot of incentives to trap us in that. And I say in the book, there's nothing wrong with having a Lamborghini, but a fleet of them is not going to bring you enlightenment. Whatever that enlightenment means to you. If you had the choice between a Lambo and love, to really feel love, to really express that, what are you going to choose?
I think that's a pretty simple answer. And you use a very interesting word there, which a lot of people, again, that might just wash over them, resonate. What resonates with you, right? That's electrical terminology, right? Something is vibing with you. Like, you know, what do the kids say now? Oh yeah, I was vibing out to that music. I'm like, right, okay, good vibrations. A classic song. Energy, absolutely. Like the this whole grounding rabbit hole that a lot of Bitcoiners have been going through. It's not even whether it's now it gets to a case for me where if I come across something new like that, like grounding, uh, drinking out of copper, things like this that have India have been doing this for goodness knows how long, right? I flash back to when we lived in Singapore and you go to an Indian restaurant, you'd always get a copper cup to drink your water from. Didn't question it. Like, why are they giving us this copper stuff? Because they know, right? They know. But we just either
We get
been,
plastic.
yeah. pass me the tinny of the full of beer, yeah, and aluminium leaching into that. Anyway, all of that. Where was I going with this? Resonance. Yeah, grounding, and learning about that. And it's not even. I don't even have to think that deeply about it anymore. It's like, okay, somebody says, "All right, guys, get out there and ground yourself." And what does that mean? Where go barefoot on the grass. Barefoot on the sand. Barefoot. Just go barefoot. Go touch the planet. I'm like, huh. That just intuitively makes sense. Like, why wouldn't I do that? Like, it's wow, that feels really beautiful on my feet or the grass, and haven't felt that in a God knows how long. But then when you get to the science, how it flushes the positive ions out of you, and you connect at the 432 hertz that the Earth is, and we are designed to do that. Like every other living animal on this planet is well. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do that every chance I get, hopefully every day. And by doing those actions, the kids have picked up on it. They get out and ground each morning as well, which is great to see. And again, a lot of Bitcoiners think, wow, this is just woo. Like, just stack more sats. Like,
and it's understandable because it's unfamiliar. But again, getting a little exposure to it, when you step away from the mundane, you can become a little more open to thinking about it. I think with the energy of frequencies, you can look at it very simply, and I use this analogy in the book and with many people talking about it. We are both a receiver and a transmitter.
mm-hmm.
And what frequency? Pardon?
We're a node.
Yeah.
We receive and relay messages. Right.
Right. So what are we tuning into? So are we tuning into the, for lack of maybe a wooey term, low vibrational frequencies? Let's call it AM radio. You're talking in just all the voices who want to rile you up and get you pissed and excite you to do something, and the news and the media and the politics and all that. If you spend most of your time tuning into that vibration, then what you're going to transmit it is probably going to be the same frequency. And we see that throughout the world in most of our political structures, certainly in the US. That's what's being transmitted, and that's what's being retransmitted. But if you tune away from an AM station and you up-level your frequency to an FM station, and you turn into whatever music may, again, resonate, a piece of classical music that brings you to tears, it's a whole different frequency. A John Coltrane, Love Supreme, it's a whole different frequency. And so we have to think a little bit more consciously, or we have the opportunity, we don't have to think a little more consciously about what frequencies are we tuning into? Where are we going to tune our dial? Because we're the tuners of the dial. And if we just leave our station set at division, polarity, angst, fear, that's going to be our experience of life. Why don't we think about tuning into a little different frequency? Maybe that's going to change our experience of life. Maybe that's going to change the experience of life of everyone around us. And if more of us start doing that, I think that's what's going to help lead us to fixing the world.
And this is where it gets dark, because you go down the rabbit hole, which Jack Cruz was talking about. I've heard other people talk about it. I've been down the Wilhelm Reich rabbit hole, talking about the organites and orgone energy, positive energy, having these things around the house to kind of convert the deadly orgone energy that is, thrown at us, do the people that are trying to control us, because we have to be very frank here, and there are people, that's what politicians try and do. They try and control people to do things that they want to do. Are we under attack from these frequencies? Because they know, and here's another rabbit hole for you, like the church bells, for example. Have you learned about that one? About how tens of thousands of church bells were destroyed, obviously, during bombing campaigns in World War II, but then just after that, masses completely removed and destroyed, or taken and hidden and replaced with a bell that sends out a different resonance. And you're like, what? Like, really? Do they know? And the music used to, you have again, this all gets just put aside as, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, yada yada yada. So okay, but did this happen? Was music always played at 432 hertz, or A was tuned to 432 hertz and everything above that? And has that since changed? Well, all you got to do is go to Spotify and do a search for a playlist in 432 hertz. So there's all of the music that has either been produced originally or reproduced at 432 hertz instead of the 440, which we now get. Because people that do want to control others, they know we are walking, talking, light emitting, frequency receiving signals, antennae. What can they do to control? And then you get to like 2020, lock everybody down, get everybody watching their screens, completely addicted to it. And in that time, goodness knows, across Europe, how many 5G towers were being put up all over the place. You can't, now you drive around here, you can't go more than 100 meters without seeing one of these things. And it cannot just be because we can, oh, let's help these guys, use their phones better and stay in touch. Like, there's something else. You can stand right under one of those things and still have just 2 bars on your phone. So something else is going on. But I don't know if you've looked into that rabbit hole, but or if that's resonating with you at all. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, again, it's a function of awareness. Are we complacent, or are we going to take a little time to be more aware of what's going on around us, and also be aware of our own power, our own ability to digest our circumstances, to process it, and reflect something? We are incredibly powerful beings. And, our experience is all an experience of consciousness. Right?
Well, that's a line.
Tell me something that you're not experiencing that's not a function of your state of consciousness. So all our experience, in essence, is derived from consciousness. And I would say that's the ultimate network, with many different frequencies. But again, if we can tune in, if we have that control. Now, sometimes it takes, a teacher in India talks about this idea of deserving power. You do have to exercise sometimes the discipline, the practices, the search for wisdom and knowledge to distinguish it from the data and the information, oftentimes that's meaningless, that's thrown at us. We do have to build up a certain amount of deserving power to then be able to exercise that power. So I don't think we have to be a victim to all of these things that someone may be trying to control us with. How different electromagnetic frequencies will affect us and change things, I think it's absolutely true that there can be some problems associated with that. Do we want to move as humans to chip implanted beings that degrade our own consciousness state in favor of a technologically developed consciousness state that is then going to be how we operate in the world? Something to think about.
I'm a solid no on that one, by the way.
Yeah. One of the things, and I talk about this in the book, and it was something that I hadn't originally thought much about, is how technology has morphed over time. At one time, technology, and in most economic realms, technology is simply a tool to increase productivity. We build a hammer, we smelt nails to be able to build a house faster. It's a tool. When Galileo developed and found the telescope, it was no longer a tool just to explore the universe. It had a fundamental change in our metaphysical understanding of our place in life. No longer was the Earth the center of the universe. We were a little dot amongst a vast universe revolving around the sun from which we derived our energy in a small solar system, in a small galaxy, and in a universe extending beyond our comprehension. It totally bent our frames as to what the picture of reality looked like. That's a different application of technology. And now we have to begin to think about, technology is a tool. Technology is something that changes our understanding of life. And is technology going to become our master and something that is going to rule our lives? I think most of us feel like technology has many great things, and yet at times we feel ruled by it. So there's a book, Neil Postman, Technopoly, wonderful about this concept, and I talk about it in the book. So it's a way of thinking about as we go into AI. And I think I'm not scared of AI per se. I think it does have, and you mentioned, what are all these people going to do if they're put out of work from AI? And I think it's a tremendous opportunity. For all these problems, I am incredibly optimistic about the potential and the future of humanity if we can make some fundamental shifts. So if people no longer have to struggle as much as they do in a current inflationary system, whereas Jeff Booth, I think the best articulator of this, prices should fall to the marginal cost of production. If prices for the routine expenses of life, food, shelter, and clothing, fall the way they should be, then our true contribution can come from many more things in life. Whether it is creating new businesses and inventions and technologies, whether it is expressing our life source through the arts and humanities, or exploring the deeper wisdoms and truths in life, it can free us up an opportunity to do that. And that's going to propel humanity into a whole new type of existence. Safe in Principles of Economics makes it clear. I mean, there's always work for humans to do, but we can change it from menial work, which degrades us, when we have technologies that can uplift us. And one of the things that I think we have cast aside, especially in Western cultures, and I talk about this in the book, is the wisdom traditions of millennia that came through in all cultures of the world in the forms of mythology, the guiding lessons of mythologies. And to us now, they seem rather ridiculous. So they've been cast aside, whether it's the gods of Rome or Athens or the Nordic gods, whatever they may be. But behind them were lessons in ethics, in morality, in deeper meaning of life, of guiding visions that were lessons taught in a way that more people could understand and incorporate into their life as something deeper than, how do I get food today? And we've thrown all that out. And I think there's an opportunity, not by returning to any particular mythological framework, but understanding the value there and returning to a comprehension and awareness of these values, which is what we need to guide us in the future, which is what we need to guide how we use technology, how we develop our political and economic, geopolitical systems. We've lost a lot of that. And we've lost a lot with that. And so that's why I have a section in the book talking about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And we're all on our own individual hero's journey. The mythic ones were the great forces, those who faced great odds, stepped away from the mundane to go and probe something much more deeper and profound and bring that wisdom back. This has been part of consciousness for mankind and humankind for millennia. But that no longer seems to be part of our experience and respected in the same way. And I think we have an opportunity, if we can move beyond, again, meeting the basics, to ascend what Abraham Maslow called the hierarchy of needs, to that need for ultimately self-actualization, self-fulfillment, something deeper. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity. I've never been more excited, despite oftentimes getting bogged down in all the problems and all the what we want freedom from and away from, and whether it's the frequencies that are being bombarded at us or the control structures. We have the ability to have a freedom too that we've never experienced. We do live on an abundant planet. We have scarcity in our time and energy to use the materials of the universe in a certain way, but we can develop those things.
There's a quote in the book about having a long life. Life is long enough. It's just do you remember it? Was it?
Yeah, it's I think it's from Seneca.
Seneca or Socrates? What I go ahead. I would love to pull it out, but it really resonated. But I'm sure you don't remember it word for word. But do you want to kind of riff on that while I try and find it?
Sure. The principle is that we often pine about how life is too short. And his message is, it is not so much that life is too short, but it's that how we use life is often squandered. We all have roughly the same potential in life, but the question is how we use it. So it's not that life is too short, but we don't often use it in the best
I found
means.
it. You were right. You nailed it. Seneca on the shortness of life. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough. That is very profound.
And so my call and my hope is that in moving from fixing the money to fixing the world, we can have much more the experience of not wasting our lives or having them wasted by other control structures, so that we can really appreciate, and we can all have on our tombstones something of real contribution that we gave to life and our real experience of life, which I think when it comes down to it is love.
Mm-hmm. And
so that's why I say that, I think the protocol of life is love. And even though that may not always be the experience, what if we operated that way? How much is that going to ruin in the universe?
That would be, and you know where I'm going to go, I'm sure, listeners. You have your first 20 years of your life ripped apart, ripped away from you because of the structure of control that has been hung over us. You have mothers giving birth to babies and giving them over to complete strangers within 3 months. And then by the age of 2.5 or 3, they're in a kindy or a pre-kindy, and then they're in K1 through 12. And you hit 20, all that time stolen. For what? To learn somebody else's agendas. it's so despicable to me. It's so disgusting. It's inhumane, and this is why I, rally very hard to especially to young people that are having kids. Please don't just hand them over to like a state education system, not even a private school system. Like, they this is I think more important than fixing them. Fix the money, fix the world, but we've got to stop feeding the beast our children's hearts, minds, and souls. Like, it's that line has to be drawn in the sand. Then we will raise sovereign families and sovereign communities and sovereign movements, whatever language we want to use. But it's it's very, very deep when you look at it in that way, rather than, free education is a human right, bro. It's like, okay, it ain't free. Number one.
Right. And again, this is the opportunity, I think, that we begin to fix the money, that, we've morphed into these systems, whether it's by design and you want to attribute a malice to it or not. We are in a system. And if both people in a family have to work simply to make ends meet, and outsource their child rearing to the lowest paid amongst us, and I also do discuss this in the book, that's people just fighting to survive. And there's lots of consequences to it. And it is a unseen by many consequence of the fiat monetary system. And I think the more people can see that, because we all know something is wrong here. We see it rise in the populist movements, right, left, whatever. Something is wrong. We all sense that. People point fingers at the wrong source of the problem, but a fundamental source is simply a monetary system that robs us all, that puts us in situations where we have to outsource our child rearing to others, to go to work for higher paid jobs. We have to not spend as much time on doing the things that we really love, that would be our true expression of life, because of this system. And I use the term beast, and I think it very much so that, to me, I don't know there's no magic wand that is going to come and wipe through all these systems, and Tinkerbell is not going to tap somebody on the head and all of a sudden change everything. But if we can begin to rob this beast of a system of its fuel, of money without integrity, and I think this is most obvious in the military-industrial complex and the war machine, if we can begin to rob that beast of its fuel, then the fire which it breathes from that dragon is going to be a lot weaker. And then we can start shifting that fuel, which we all have to, in essence, offer up, knowingly or unknowingly, in our time and labor. We can redirect it to things that are much more meaningful for humanity. And I think that's what we all need to understand. And that's the fixing the money piece of it that can help towards fixing the world. But there's a lot of other pieces of awareness and understanding. And that's really why I wrote the book, is to help the dialogue advance much more into understanding, not just the problems, but all the layers that we have to be a little more conscious of as we go about designing new systems, new institutions, new structures, new social structures, new nation states, whatever they may be, new systems of human organization. What are the principles we're going to base them on? Is it going to be fear, greed, control, the exercise of power, force particularly, not so much power, because true power is contrasted with force. Force is making somebody do something else. We've all been in a room with people who have true power, true magnetic power. They don't have to force you to pay attention to them. You are just compelled and drawn by the magnetism of their energy. But are we going to build our systems based on more universal principles, the recognition we all are unique and sovereign individuals with our own life experience, living within an interconnected web, and that, as the old saying goes, what I do to me, I do to you. And when we design systems in that way, and we begin to think of our connections and our interaction that way, and base things more on love, that's the way we're going to fix the world.
And it's interesting you bring up the military industrial complex, because I just thought about this the other day, and we talk a lot about the pendulum in Bitcoin land, right? As the pendulum swung too far one way and too far. So if you just look at the military industrial complex, for example, on one side of the scale, you've got a human being that is born with inalienable rights, that knows it is the worst thing you could possibly do would be to intentionally harm or kill someone.
Mm-hmm.
You know that inherently.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that. If you didn't know that and you're learning that for the first time, you're probably a psycho. So go get some help. But you know that. Right. And on the other end of the scale, we have possibly the biggest business in the globe right now is built upon training people to maim and intentionally kill people. There couldn't be more of an inverted clown world. Like, that pendulum's gone way too far to this end. If that is what, and that's pretty much every nation globally, like this is what they're doing under the pretense, and this is, things are hotting up in Europe, especially under the pretense. I'm sure you've seen all the tweets. We have to rearm to defend ourselves. So that means there's going to be huge amounts of money made for these people that are crafting this narrative, because they're the ones that provide the weapons and whatever else. And by the way, people that weren't aware, the Nobel Peace Prize was named after David Nobel, I believe, who invented dynamite and TNT. Like, come on, the Peace Prize? Like, it's such a fucking clown world. It's unbelievable. So we have this narrative, and we have certain countries now looking at military drives or talking about conscription. And then I think back to like what happened in the US for the Vietnam War. I've seen these YouTube videos of the live broadcasts of white men in suits pulling numbers out of a hat. And if that number represented your birthday, you're off to the army, dude, and we're going to ship you, we're going to put a gun in your hand and ship you across to a jungle for you to kill people you've never met. This has to, like, how far does this pendulum swing before it has to swing all the way back to the realization is like, that is the most sickest thing any other human being could ever do to somebody else, but yet we're letting people force and control us into thinking this is right.
Yep, it's a sad state of affairs, and obviously no one does want it. Well, most of the population does want it. You understand from birth that it is not how you want to operate in the world. And yet we've developed a system that allows this to happen.
And glorifies it through the movies.
Absolutely. Yeah. You rally people through that. There is again, I reference this in the book, somebody else talks about being a resistance fighter against this, but ultimately becoming a loving resistance fighter. And I think that's the important part. And then we need to bring more into the space and into the dialogue. It's not just tearing the old system down. It's not overthrowing the man. It's not trashing the systems. It's also doing it with a loving nature, because you are not going to tear down a new system in hostility and anger and replace it with a system that isn't based in hostility and anger. We've seen that too many times. We've seen systems overthrown, feudal monarchical systems overthrown only to be replaced with systems that, in the name of allegedly serving all of the population, just replicate the worst atrocities ever permeated on humankind. So we have to become loving resistance fighters as we do this. I think it's so important. I mentioned it twice in the book, R. Buckminster Fuller's quote, "You never change things by tearing down the existing reality. You build a new system that makes the old one obsolete." And I think that's what we need to do.
100%. All right. We've been going an hour and 20 and we haven't talked about sex yet, which I promised the listeners we would.
You promised. Yeah, get them to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. But I was really enjoying that conversation. So it's funny that this chapter suddenly popped up as I'm reading through the book. And I'll give you some context. Do you mind sharing where you live?
I live in Madeira, Portugal.
Right. So you've moved from the US to Madeira, which is slowly becoming Bitcoin country. Well done to Andre and his work at the Free Madeira.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unbelievable. I was very proud to be a small part of his journey and helping him in the beginning. And the story does tie into your chapter. So there we were in June 2022. There was a bunch of Bitcoiners, those that had been invited over by Andre to tour around the island, meet the finance minister and the energy company and all of these other people, and the president as well, and his cabinet, just talk about Bitcoin and help Andre with his educational mission. So we're at Central Grill, having the best steaks, having the best time. And we were just talking about Bitcoin fixes this, like this. And Max DeMarco and Aaron were there as well, that made the film, the documentary about meeting the president. If nobody's watched that, go find it. It's great. So they turn around and said, okay, well, I think it was Aaron, does Bitcoin fix bad sex? And I said, absolutely it does. And here's why. And you hit pretty much all the points in your chapter. So it's good to know we were on the same wavelength without having ever met each other. But go for it. Explain what this chapter is and what it's about. And it's a fun one.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up, because I think you're right. It is, what I'm trying to do is to help people understand how the monetary and economic system affect far more than just money, because I think that can attract people so much to a deeper understanding and awareness. So relationships, intimate and otherwise, I think are impacted by the time preference orientation, that economic principle of, are we thinking short-term? Are we thinking long-term? With a culture based on debt and consumerism and very short-term mentality, a high time preference, that can bleed into the way we interact with other people and our relationships. Set aside from the people who talk about everything in life is a transaction as opposed to a relation, I don't think you're going to have a good relationship with a partner if you view it as a transaction. But with a high time preference, a very short-term orientation, you may be thinking about nothing more than the bar than, do I want to have sex with this person, and where can I go to do that tonight? And that's it, and it's over. It's a very different orientation if you think about, how can I meet someone, build a life together, have a home, raise children, contribute to each other, encourage each other, help contribute to each other's happiness, and fulfill a meaningful life together. That's a very different orientation. It's a long-term orientation. And so that perspective, while not immediately obvious, I think our monetary system begins to bleed over to that. Again, we've had some fundamental changes in our nature of relationships and sexuality, which have been positive in some ways and yet they have also resulted in a huge short-term mentality of a porn industry, et cetera, which is very exploitative, extractive, and not really contributory towards an awareness and an understanding of the deeper energies that are involved in an intimate experience. So we focused so much on that short term. It is about deriving an immediate pleasure, oftentimes by using someone else. You do not get to the depths that exist within sexual intimacy with that kind of time frame. This is something that I've done some training on, and that's just not where our culture is. It's not what's shown in the movies. I reference there was a series on of a young American woman in Paris, Emily in Paris, and they go to a Ferris wheel in Paris that's famed for its romantic, well, I won't call them romantic, but encounters. And she turns to him and says, "You have 4 minutes." Well, you're not really going to have a depth of a connection in 4 minutes on a Ferris wheel, but our culture makes, oh, this is exciting. Okay. That's not what a long-term loving relationship is built on. That's not probing the depth of our energies as human beings that rise up through us, through our sexuality and other things that we want to share with someone, that we want to be able to have this interplay of energies, not just an immediate release and then go on. So there's a deep element there. And you have to do it on a foundation, I think, of a longer term horizon, a willingness to be slower in our interactions in all areas, and to do it based on love. Because again, as I say in the book, if you pay for sex, you know you're not getting love. It's simply a transaction. And we all know that's much more shallow experience than deeper mutual commitment to each other. Again, things change, people change, they grow and evolve. Maybe that relationship doesn't last forever. But what's your intention in it? How are you embarking upon it? What are you trying to give to another person, not just get from them?
Yeah, very well done.
Some of the biggest shifts in my life.
What
I think if everybody understood this, that would be the magic wand, which would change the world, because nobody is going to love deeply and passionately and want to kill somebody else or tolerate it be happening.
Absolutely. And what was you said you'd studied it in some, I can't remember the word you used. It wasn't tantric, but it began with T. Like again, we're looking to Eastern practices.
Yeah, and Tantra has been so, like most things, just perverted in Western cultures as to be about sex. No, it's about working with the energies that we have as human consciousness tapped into a huge field, tapping into it, developing it, learning it, expressing it, and channeling it. So Tantra is one word that's used for it in the East that is grossly misunderstood in the West as some sort of bizarre sexual practice of whatever. That's not what it is. You have to go much deeper to understand it. And once you do, it can be life-changing and, can be beautiful.
I remember that word first popping up, and it was related to sting somehow. I can't remember what the whole thing was, but yeah, you're right. It was like the basic understanding is like having sex, but without coming to orgasm or something, and making it a longer. So clearly, I have no understanding. So what is it like? What is the actual terminology? And what was the other word that you used in the book? Or was it tantra? Let me check.
I don't think I use Tantra, however it is in that tradition, but it's the difference between swimming in shallow waters or diving deep. It's a very different experience. We are so focused on short-term orientation towards excitement, thrills, sensory immediate heightened sensory experiences, that we leave it there. And you don't dive into the depths of the ocean quickly. You have to do that slowly. You have to adjust. You have to attune your energies. And in intimacy, you attune those energies to your partner in a back and forth flow of energy, not just a relief from a feeling of a pressure that may build up. It's a very different thing. It's a very different thing. And so it really is understanding the energetic principles. And that's why many traditions, especially from the East, are working with the energy patterns in your body, all right, in your awareness, in your consciousness, in the field around you at many different levels. And this is just another level for expression of that. And, you know, many of us spend most of our time and much of our thought in pursuit of a depth of intimacy and an experience and love and sharing and openness and vulnerability in the deepest part of our hearts. If we were to express what would be the most magical and beautiful thing we could experience, it probably might be something like that. And yet that's not where the messages of most of our culture is. It's not what we're taught. It's not what we're trained. Just like our monetary system, we are not trained in these things. Our parents didn't understand it. Most of our culture doesn't understand it. Our movies don't portray it that way. So it takes a little work, and it's going to take some shift. But again, if we shift our orientation and our time preference, then that short life can be very long if it's not wasted. Just as our energies, all right, if not wasted in a short experience, can be much more meaningful and in depth.
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, I'm sure people are going to get bored of me saying this, but getting to meet other Bitcoiners is a giant step forward in achieving this. And I'm sure you felt the same, but you go to your local meetup, or you finally just randomly meet another Bitcoiner, complete stranger. You might see they've got a cap on or a shirt on. Instant connection, and something that is inexplicable the first time you feel it, but addictive as well, because that is natural. That is how we should be interacting with each other. Yeah. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person in Dublin. That's for sure. So,
absolutely, I'm exciting that also. It is very nourishing for the soul.
Yeah.
To be able to be in dialogue and conversation of depth with people, to be able to learn and share and grow and evolve, because I think that's what this journey of life is really all about. And this is a great way to do it.
Right. I've got to plug in my I'm about to lose the battery before I ask the final question. So let me plug it. I'll ask you the final question.
Okay.
And I know you know it is. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think I would take that pill and I would grind it up and I would sprinkle that little bit of fairy dust all over the world, because it's going to take all of us. There's no one single person that's going to make the difference. And the more we think one or two people or a political party or some movement is going to fix all of our problems without us taking back our own power, we're going to fall victim to the same things. So crush it up and let everybody have a little taste of it.
Love it. And stop outsourcing your power to politicians that don't even know you exist, right? You know, that is the true ownership own your own power, make your own decisions, create the world that you want to create, and surround yourself with people you want to be surrounded with, that elevate you and you resonate with. Again, here's that word, resonance. Yeah, I appreciate everything. I mean, it's great just to have another voice on the scene and another author. And I wish you all the best with the book and getting it out there and hitting the conference scene and getting on more podcasts. It's somebody of over 60 years of age as well. You've got a whole bunch of people that need to hear your message of your age group. People, that's another thing, right? People tend to resonate with people from their own kind of generation, if there is such a word as generations. Arguably not. We're all part of the same generation if you're on the planet at the same time, I believe. But yeah, this is just the way it is. And it's just great to see you here and leaning into it, mate. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it's one of the things that's absolutely phenomenal about the Bitcoin space and all of the leading voices like you is the openness, the supportiveness, to be able to encourage others to come on and to be able to provide the platforms like this for very different voices and very different contributions in the community. And there's so many people that are doing fantastic work or in development and things like that, which is not my area. So I contribute where I can, and having a few more years under my belt, a little more experience, a little different perspective, hopefully, I think we get to a stage where we're not the doers per se anymore. We are hopefully purveyors of the little tidbits of wisdom that hopefully we've accumulated in our life that can help make other people think a little bit more deeply about their own individual journey in life. And if we're able to do that, then we've done a good service. And that was my objective in writing this book. It's a passion project. You don't make money writing books. It's about spreading the word.
Totally. Thank you. And if people do want to check out the book, where is the best place? Are you on Consensus Network yet with Nico, or are you on just Amazon?
Actually, I saw Nico last night, but no, it's available on Amazon.com, on the worldwide sites. My website is moneyloveandbitcoin.com. You can get the link to the US site there and a little bit more about it, but fully available on Amazon sites worldwide. So love to have people pick up a copy and write a review. That just helps spread the message.
And is Twitter the best place for people to DM you?
Yeah. Twitter's the place I'm most active in. Again, those social handles are on my website. I go under bitsofwisdom_IO on X. So.
Excellent. All right. I'll put those links in the show notes. Thank you for coming on. Have a great day. Great to see you.
Thank you. Wonderful conversation. I look forward to seeing you in Dublin.
You too, Paul. We'll have a Guinness.
Ciao.
See you.